Okay, good morning, everyone. I hope everybody had a good 4th of July. I'm just going to take my mask off, and I deeply appreciate that our interpreters are here. Thank you very much on that. And again, I appreciate that Dr. Kerouac from Bay State and Dr. Roos from Mercy Trinity are here, take the time to be here every Monday. They'll be coming up after my brief update to give their update pertaining to their respective hospitals and our continued working together. And then as we've done the past 3 weeks or month, so they can get back to their important duties, we'll take questions from the media for Dr. Kerouac and Dr. Roos immediately, and then we'll go back into updates from my cabinet heads on the city of Springfield. So we had some good numbers as far as new cases this past Thursday, 4, Friday, 8, Saturday, 4, Sunday, 8, for a total of 2,683. The deaths, and again, God rest their souls, and our sympathy, thoughts, and prayers and encouragement go out to the affected family members and friends, is holding tight at 120. Though Commissioner Helen Harris indicates there could be some reclassification coming from the state. So that number of 120 on deaths holds, which would be 55 white, which is nearly 46%, 27 black, which is about 22.5%, 36 Hispanics, about 30%, and 2 Asian, 1.7%. We continue feeding our seniors with delivery of meals to our seniors daily, which continues to go on. In working with Commissioner Helen Harris and Director of Parks and Facilities Management Pat Sullivan, cooling centers, if needed, possibly they could be needed later this week, can be opened smaller scale, 20 or less. We mentioned that last week, but if needed, they can be opened. Commissioner Clapper will come up and give you an update. Obviously, they were very, very busy, not only with the firework extra details, which they did make some confiscations of fireworks, but also they took off a number of guns off the street over the long weekend, and a couple of the culprits were individuals that had bracelets on themselves. I know Lieutenant Toledo in the North End C3 detail made a nice arrest, and a number of guns, but a couple of the arrestees again had bracelets on them, and one I believe we just arrested June 21st with a weapon threatening the mother. So again, I shake my head pertaining to the court system. Commissioner Calvi from Fire will give you an update. We did not have any major fires, which was great. They had a couple of accidents they had to deal with. They dealt with hundreds and hundreds of calls of fireworks. On the COVID end, again, Commissioner Clapper, no one is out, which is fantastic. And Commissioner Calvi on the COVID-19, no one is out. DPW, Director Signoli will give you an update. They're at full strength. TJ Plant, my CAFO, indicates again we're about $7 million in deficit spending for our residents and business community, and about 3.9 loss of revenue. School Superintendent Dan Warwick indicate we're nearly at 1.5 million meals served to our children, students, families. That is breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. We are going to continue this throughout the summer. Remote summer learning program starts today, July 6th, and will go to August 6th. Superintendent Warwick and his team continues to work on the reopening of school in the fall. Again, we have 3 plans: full return, hybrid, or remote learning, going, if possibility, on all 3. Pat Sullivan will come up and give you an update, some update on our Phase 3 reopening aspects. Splash pads are going great, and We just had a reclassification on, we're looking to do movies in the park. We're very excited about doing that. But under governor's edict, you cannot have over 100 people. So we have to, I don't believe we'll be able to pursue that. The movies in the park, as Pat will indicate, are always very, very well attended. So that it looks like there's going to be difficulty moving forward on that. Director Tim Sheehan of Echo Dev, Chief Development Officer, our last Prime the Pump, which was the third phase, over 130 applicants, 1.7 million in requests. We've put out 1.225 million, so we're reviewing those applications. And the nonprofits, which is very near and dear to my heart, coming from my old South End Community Center days, we put out $250,000 to help out nonprofits, and that's up to $25,000 moving forward. We did a nice rally in front of City Hall with school committee woman Latonia Naylor, and these were moms, and Commissioner Clapper and I were there, who have lost a loved one, a son or a daughter who had been shot and killed, and a number of mothers spoke, and Commissioner Clapper spoke to a couple with his sisters. But what struck me was that they spoke about why these individuals are on the street, and the court system letting them out, and knowing who they are, and they're on bracelets, and we know who they are, and we keep arresting them. But these are coming from the mothers. So black African-American mothers. And one, Miss Clark, just lost her daughter, who had nothing to do with anything. Wrong place at the wrong time. And I think that's important to point out. Commissioner Helen Carlton-Harris and myself and Attorney Talia G., our Chief Diversity Inclusion Officer, did another community forum at Mount Zion Baptist Church last week in the evening with Pastor Atu White, and that was well received as we continue to move forward in unity. So that is the brief update pertaining to our COVID-19 situation. We are in phase 3. Pat Sullivan and Helen will probably go into that a little bit more. We're going to stay status quo, but I think you're going to hear from Helen, and I know you're going to hear from Dr. Kerouac and Dr. Roos. Even though our numbers continue to trend in a good way, we have to stay ever vigilant that we follow the guidelines of masking, the hand washing, the social distancing. If you don't feel well, stay home, because you have seen these spikes in a number of states across America. We don't want it here. People do like to travel. Our coordination with Bay State and Mercy's worked very well if and when we do face an uptick. But I'm sure that Dr. Kerouac and Dr. Roos will give an update of what trend they see coming, whether in a positive or challenging type way. But again, to the people, residents, city of Springfield, and the business community, I deeply appreciate your continued cooperation and collaboration. It's because of each and every one of you we've been able to move forward in our continuing efforts to defeat this COVID-19 coronavirus. Without further ado, I'm going to bring up the President and CEO of Bay State Health Systems, Dr. Mark Kerouac. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your continued leadership and in holding these events. Very much appreciated. And I also want to congratulate Commissioner Carlton-Harris for her successful efforts to blunt the impact of the virus here in Springfield. The news from Bay State is pretty much the same as it was last week. 15 patients who are COVID positive in all across the health system. All but one of them are at Bay State Medical Center, and only one now in critical care. We're typically seeing about 2 to 3 new cases a day, which means the virus is still circulating in the community, but at a very low level. All of our COVID care is now in a single unit at Bay State Medical Center, and it keeps the rest of the hospital system open for traditional care under the new guidelines for keeping patients and visitors safe. We continue to work hard to secure adequate supplies of personal protective equipment for our team members and local testing supplies. These are now becoming scarcer and scarcer as the virus flares in other parts of the country and as other industries begin to open up, which often encumbers testing and PPE as well. We're continuing to test 300 to 400 individuals per day with a very low positivity rate, 1 to 2%. Testing is now available to anybody with a doctor's referral in 3 sites here in Springfield, as well as in Westfield, Greenfield, and Ware. We've also extended our testing to congregate living situations, which, as you know, are very dangerous sites as far as spread. So we're talking about skilled nursing facilities, senior living situations, and public housing facilities here in Springfield. We're hoping to broaden testing still further if low rates persist and our testing supplies remain steady. As the mayor alluded to, Massachusetts really does stand out when you look at the rest of the country. We're now up to 50,000 new cases per day in the United States, 600 to 800 new deaths. We were in a virtual briefing of the Governor's Recovery Advisory Board last week, and they showed statistics from epidemiologists that suggested that Massachusetts has the lowest rate of transmission of the virus of any state in the Union, which was really a very good thing. They then shared a survey in which it found that only about 60% of us are wearing a mask on a consistent basis. So in spite of inconsistent mask usage, the rate of transmission is still pretty low. This says to me that it could get even better. As the mayor alluded to, we're now entering phase 3, so some casino floors, gyms, museums can open up. State and federal leaders across the country, however, continue to give mixed messages and sometimes flat out wrong messages about transmission of the virus and how to protect yourself. And I am getting very discouraged that we are losing our fight as a country to contain this virus, even though we have had success here in Western Massachusetts. I'm therefore grateful for the leadership of the governor, of his entire administration, our legislative delegation, and Mayor Sarno, which have really given us a consistent set of rules and guidelines to follow. So the key messages in terms of what we need to do now, with the pandemic raging across the country, we need to stay on our guard, to keep cases low here in Western Mass. It's not going to be easy. It's particularly important as we liberalize activities that we do better on masking, social distancing, and hand washing. It's particularly important in communities of color, which have a higher rate of COVID-19 infection and higher rates of serious complications when they are infected. I do believe we can do better on masks. Other countries have. And it's a way of showing respect for those around you. We shouldn't be seeing it as a political statement, simply good common sense, like not driving while drunk. We've gotten away with easing back slowly into a new normal that's way better than a shutdown, even if it doesn't feel like the happy old days of 2019. So I hope we can keep up the good work. And again, thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Dr. Carroll, for your leadership. And thank you for your leadership on the Governor's Review Panel, too. We appreciate that. Dr. Robert Roos is here from Mercy Trinity. He's the Chief Medical Officer, and as with Bay State, they've been a great partner, so he will give the update coming from Mercy Trinity. Dr. Robert Roos.
So good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mayor, and all the commissioners and the legislative delegation as well. I want to echo Dr. Kerouac's sentiments that Massachusetts really has been a shining example of what collaboration based in public health and science can do. And I just want to recognize that and thank you all for your efforts as we move forward. I also hope you had a nice, restful, peaceful, and safe Independence Day weekend. This past weekend, in fact, yesterday, Mercy Medical Center achieved an important milestone in relation to the coronavirus pandemic as we discharged our sole remaining COVID-positive patient in the hospital safely to home. So for the first time in 16 consecutive weeks, 112 consecutive days, we have 0 COVID positive patients admitted to Mercy Medical Center, and all of our units are currently COVID free. We're now into our 5th month fighting this pandemic in Massachusetts. We've seen over 110,000 confirmed infections, and we know that this has been a journey, and one that has been both long and challenging, but also that it is far from over yet. I do want to take a moment to recognize the commitment, the teamwork, the skill, and the bravery on behalf of all of the colleagues at Mercy Medical Center and affiliates, all of the support staff, the leadership, and our community and other hospital partners here in the region for contributing to this moment. I want to thank you for what you've done and for what we will continue to achieve together with a focus on public health, healing the community, and now reopening in our recovery together. Together, our colleagues at Mercy Medical Center and affiliates have treated over 700 patients in our hospital and emergency departments since the beginning of this pandemic. Together, we performed more than 18,000 coronavirus tests and have done outreach to those communities particularly at risk, including in long-term care facilities and the homeless. We've seen more than 15,000 negative test results now, and our weekly percent of positive tests is between 1% and 2%. Together, we've utilized treatments for the most critically ill, and we continue to study their effectiveness. Together, we've modified policies and floor plans, and we've adopted countless new processes in order to keep our colleagues and our patients safe. And most importantly, together as a community, as I mentioned at the outset, we have flattened this curve, and Massachusetts can be a model for other areas of the country. At Mercy last week, we also celebrated the remarkable story of a young man, Gustavo, who goes by Gus, who at 36 years old contracted the coronavirus early in the pandemic and ended up being hospitalized with a severe infection. But as a result of his determination, great skill, and rehabilitation, he was discharged last week after 95 days in the hospital. At Mercy, we've celebrated each of those stories when someone's discharged home with what we had called a code journey, where the patient exits to the cheers of the staff with that familiar tune, "Don't Stop Believing," playing overhead. And I want to say that this one, as well as the code journey that played yesterday when our sole remaining patient went home, were very special ones. Because as a hospital, we've been on a journey. We've been on a journey to zero COVID. And while we know it's not going to stay zero, I do believe it's a moment for us to celebrate. Because just as Gus, in his own words, couldn't wait to get home to hug his wife and kids and enjoy his favorite meals, we too want to get back to the activities and the routines that we had. And this is just a symbol for us and of hope to come. However, it's also equally important that we do remain cautious, that we are vigilant, and that we are always prepared for what the future brings, as COVID has not been eradicated in the slightest. In fact, as mentioned, the numbers of new cases are increasing at a concerning pace in many areas throughout the country, with the rates and the numbers of new infections higher now than they were earlier in the pandemic, when Massachusetts was feeling its peak and surge. And ultimately, with travel and more reopening, it could ultimately put us all at risk of an uptick in cases here. So I urge you and I encourage us not to let our guards down. We must continue to follow the guidelines and practice the actions that have helped protect us all, with universal masking, with practicing diligent hand hygiene, with ensuring testing and quarantining of those with symptoms as well as those who may travel from a higher risk area. And importantly, to keep our physical distance of 6 feet or more, We know that those efforts have led to a dramatic decrease in the rate of transmission in cases. And at Mercy, despite not having any COVID patients in the hospital today, we know that we could have one tonight or tomorrow or in a couple days from now. And so we're not changing any of the policies or procedures that we've put into place to keep our colleagues, our patients, our vendors, and our visitors safe. We will continue to screen patients upon entry for their temperature and with questions. We will continue to test all patients coming for procedures or the hospitals. We will continue to minimize our in-person gatherings and focus on our delivery of healthcare through telemedicine. We will continue to incorporate the latest evidence-based protocols, and we will maintain our COVID-free zones. We're here for you, and we will have safe care for you. And as we look into phase 3, where we can begin to open up to additional in-person group treatment and day treatment programs, we remain focused on providing all aspects of care to you, including elective surgeries, diagnostic studies like MRIs, screening studies like mammograms, and all the routine primary care and specialty visits. Nevertheless, I'm always reminded that COVID has forever changed us as people and as a community, and it will cause us to transform both in size and scope in some cases, but it will not, of course, defeat us. Even if or when we have more infections, we will not relent in our ongoing commitment to the journey to zero. And at Mercy Medical Center and throughout Trinity Health, we take great pride in continuing to transform how we can meet the community's needs. We continue to urge you and thank you for taking care of yourself and others. And if we do that, I remain confident that we will emerge stronger together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Roos. We'll have Dr. Roos and Dr. Kerouac take any questions the media might have at this point in time. And I also want to thank Patrick Leonardo, the Director of Operations for AMR, who's here every week too. So if there's any questions for Dr. Kerouac, Dr. Roos, please, now is your time.
Doctor, I was just curious if you had any comments you mentioned there is some concern about testing supplies, which of course affects the availability of testing more broadly. But it does appear that some states, like Connecticut, for example, is testing sometimes as much as twice as much as Massachusetts as a whole is, despite being only half the size. Are you at all concerned that as a state we're not necessarily monitoring broadly enough to be able to catch some of the a tiny flare-up that might happen somewhere before it becomes a problem?
Well, Secretary of HHS Mary Lou Sutters is monitoring the number of tests done across the state on a regular basis. It's on the state dashboard. They've set as a goal to move beyond the 10 or 12,000 a day that we do today to get to about 45,000 by the end of the summer and 75,000 by December. And there are a number of different strategies that are now in place. I know that there are some states that do better than we do that are doing more. It really, a lot of it depends on your ability to get commitments from your vendors, and it's become very much a kind of free-for-all in terms of who has relationships with whom and who's able to get special shipments, very much like the story with PPE. But I certainly would support the sentiment behind the question, which is that we need to continue to increase testing, and we need to work hard to get those numbers up. But I do believe the state is focused on this quite a bit.
And is the extent that it does seem consistently Western Mass has done at least on average better than the state as a whole in many of these areas throughout this crisis. To the extent that you're aware of what testing is being done across hospitals and other medical providers in this region, are you confident in what we're doing out here to properly monitor the disease, on a micro and a macro level in Western Massachusetts?
Do you want to take that? Sure.
So I think, again, I agree with Dr. Kerouac in that we know that more testing is going to provide us more surveillance, which ultimately gives us more information to identify if there's any clusters or hotspots. I believe that when the way that we've been testing initially had been a strategy that had been focused on those that were at the highest risk first, those with symptoms, those with contacts. And as we have broadened that testing capacity and availability, we've opened up the capacity to test even here in Western Massachusetts and in all of our hospitals for patients that are asymptomatic or patients that are coming in for procedures. And with that, casting that sort of wider net, if you will, of testing, we continue to see low rates of positive tests, which is, I think, reinforcing that we are, testing a significant number of individuals. If we were to broaden that even further and test more individuals that were potentially even lower risk, we may identify some initial infections that could help us, but it's not suggestive to me that we're missing any areas that would identify where we'd see an uptick in the percentage of positive tests. So it's part of a larger public health and surveillance strategy. But I think here in Western Massachusetts, we've been able to increase our testing capacity so significantly compared to the early parts of the pandemic that it's given us a very reasonably accurate assessment of where we are.
I have a slightly different take on it. I think we could be doing more. I'd like to see us do more. Bay State does 300 to 400 a day. We have a capacity to do up to 1,000 a day. We're now requiring a physician order to get a test. I think ultimately I'd love to have people be able to walk up and get a test without a referral. One of the things that we're now exploring is being able to do that, but it's important, we think, that if somebody turns out to be positive, that they are able to be in touch with a provider immediately. So we're trying to hardwire that. And it's something we did when we tested 1,400 people related to the mass demonstrations around the Black Lives Matter movement. So I think we can still do more. I'd like to see us do more. We're also at the same time trying to make it simpler. Instead of that long, skinny swab that some people have likened to a brain biopsy that goes back to the back of your throat through your nose, we found that a swab inserted just a little ways into the nose is just as good. And that means that people don't have to gear up quite so much when testing. We're actually now testing to see whether or not a patient can administer it themselves. In other words, put the swab into the nose themselves and test themselves with the same sensitivity. So as we learn more and more, we're going to try to make it easier to do. My hope is that it will become less expensive, less complicated, and a much more routine kind of procedure that you could get any of a number of locations. We're also not focused on being the only testing outlet. I'd be thrilled if every drugstore and supermarket had a testing site as well, where people, at the spur of the moment could check themselves out. I think really that's the level of testing that you've seen in other countries that have really gotten the rate of transmission virtually to zero.
And other than testing supplies, what would be is there does the state actually bar expanding testing down to certain limits like that? Like, let's just say there was a problem with vendors there's raining testing supplies. Will there still be some type of logistical or legal problem that would bar you from just playing the doors open to anybody who want to test?
No, I think the major thing is the issue of being in touch with a provider. If indeed you test positive, you don't want somebody to find this out from a website or over the telephone and have all kinds of questions and not be able to figure out what to do next, because then that needs to initiate contact tracing as well. But even today, as I say, we have a lot of excess capacity, and a lot more people could be tested. Oftentimes what we find, the great majority of people tested are tested only once. They get it done once. It's not a pleasant experience, or at least didn't used to be a pleasant experience. They decide that it's one and done. Whereas for most of us, our exposures are ongoing. And so, and I think this is going to ramp up quite a lot when students come back in the fall, when child care centers open up. A number of industries are going to require testing on a periodic basis, very much the way we do now in nursing homes.
Any other questions from the media? Okay, hearing none, thank you, Dr. Kerouac. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Stay healthy.
Mayor?
To you and your staffs, thank you for what you continue to do for us. We'll now continue on from the city's perspective with the cabinet heads, and we will go as usual first with the Commissioner of Health and Human Services, Helen Harris.
Good morning, and again, Mayor, thank you for your leadership and for continuing to support your cabinet. As the mayor said, in the city of Springfield, there are 683 cases as of yesterday. The total deaths in the city are 120. Again, as the mayor said, we send our condolences to those individuals who have lost a loved one due to COVID-19. We know that any loss in the family, no matter what the age, is difficult. We are here to be supportive. I have heard from so many of you, and I am grateful for the stories that you've told me about your loved ones, and I will be posting those stories with your permission. So thank you, public, for that. In Hampden County, there are 6,870 cases. That's 6.24% of the state. We are in the city of Springfield, 39% of the Hampden County cases. Sunday, June 28th, there were 14 cases. Monday, June 29th, 6. June 30th, 5. Wednesday, 7. July 2nd, 4. We had 8 on July 3rd. July 4th was 4. And yesterday was 8. I review that to let you know that in our city, we are seeing a decrease in our cases. And I want to show you where we're coming from and where we are right now. The map on the bottom reflects April 12th. As you can see, the map is very sparse in the number of red dots that you're seeing on the map. If you take a look at the map from today, you can see how far we've come as far as the number of cases are concerned. Why do I show you that? Because it's important to acknowledge that this virus is still in the community and still spreading. In 3 months, we have seen this map go from sparsely populated to overpopulated, particularly in some areas. My fear is that unless we continue to be vigilant, that entire map will have red dots on it, and we don't want to see that. We are doing well, but I'm very concerned about what I'm seeing across the country. I know that many of you watched the media over the weekend and saw those individuals in beaches, no social distancing, no masks, and just acting as if this virus does not impact them. It is important for us to recognize, as we host individuals into the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the city of Springfield, that we are being vigilant and being concrete about where they're coming from, making sure that we are taking extra precautions. If we are leaving this area to go to another area that has a high rate of infection, that we are taking care of ourselves and self-isolating when we return or quarantining. This is very important. If you look around the state of Massachusetts, while many of our states are doing well, there are some close to us that are not. It's important that we know our enemy. COVID-19 is the enemy, the silent enemy that has taken over our country. And it takes over our body by attaching its spiky thorns to the cells, working their way inside, and really it enjoys attaching to the lungs, therefore impacting individuals and their ability to breathe. It's also important that we recognize that this virus is highly contagious. So, City of Springfield, I ask you to continue doing what you've done. We've successfully opened, I believe, phase 2 of phase 2. Our restaurants, I've visited, our stores, I've visited, and we are doing well. I ask you to continue to do that, continue to protect each other. Phase 3 begins today. We will see that our maximum individuals have gone up to 25. So 25 individuals can be together, socially distanced and wearing masks, hopefully. And our maximum occupancy for large venues is 100. And so that's why we need to not do our movie theaters outdoors, because we can only have 100 individuals. Many of you have talked to me about festivals you want to have. You've talked to us about wanting to have large gatherings. We are disappointed as a city as well. We'd like nothing better than to host our large venues and have people come from all over to attend them. This is not possible right now. This is not personal. This is public health. And we're asking each one of you to please understand. We look forward to next year when we can celebrate freely, but right now we need to not have the large venues that we're used to enjoying during the summer. It is important to remember the symptoms. If you have a cough, if you're short of breath, if you have difficulty breathing, if you have nausea, if you have diarrhea, chills, shaking, loss of smell or taste, headaches, sore throat, please make sure that you're going to see your primary care physician, getting a note, and as Dr. Kerouac said, be tested. I'm going to end with the summer challenge that we all have. At the end of the week, we expect that we're going to potentially see a surge as far as heat is concerned. I'd appreciate it very much if those individuals who are over the age of 65 have underlying conditions that are susceptible to heat stress, that you take care of yourself. We will open the cooling centers and have some relief, but there can be no more than 25 individuals in those centers. Neighbors, take care of those individuals who are elderly. Neighbors, take care of each other and take care of yourselves. We are getting through this, but we cannot stop the work that we've done. Please be vigilant, be safe, and remember to take care of each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. Thank you, Commissioner Helen Carlton Harris. We'll now go to the public safety component of this COVID-19 coronavirus update, and we will start with the Police Commissioner of the City of Springfield, Cheryl Clapwood.
Thank you, Mayor. The police department has 0 out with the COVID right now. The weekend we were very busy. We were averaging well over 350 calls per shift. Many fireworks calls and other calls that were answered as soon as we could get to them. The system, I think, as Commissioner Calvi will bring up, is it actually got overloaded, and ShotSpotter was overloaded over the weekend. We did, however, maintain 4 special details for fireworks. There were many complaints issued for possession of fireworks. There were arrests made for selling fireworks, and there was numerous fireworks confiscated. So we responded every night, Friday, Saturday, and last night to the fireworks calls, doing our best that we can. On Friday night, detectives arrested Kim and Anthony Domino. They each had semi-automatic handguns. They each have been involved in several shootings in Springfield and other towns. They were arrested Saturday morning. Lieutenant Toledo in a C3 North End arrested a driver. He wouldn't stop. They were finally stopped on the I-91 ramp, loaded large capacity firearm recovered. 2 arrests, including Mr. Jose Soto, who was on an Elmo bracelet, has 3 prior violent convictions, including gun charges, and was involved with us as recently as June 21st. On Sunday, we assisted Ludlow report of an armed robbery in their town. C3 officers located a car possibly involved in the drive-thru of the McDonald's at the North End. They had trafficking weight and crack cocaine. 4 arrests were made, including a juvenile. 1 arrested, Israel Rosas, also wearing a GPS ankle bracelet, previous arrest for illegal firearms. I would like to congratulate retirees on Friday, Officer Mark Crutchfield, Officer Eddie Heine, and Officer Robert Brown. All 3 served the department well with distinguished careers, and they leave 34 plus years experience with each officer. So congratulations, officers. Enjoy the 2nd chapter of your life. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner Clapper, and again to the retiring officers. Thank you for your brave and dedicated, courageous service to the residents and business community here in the city of Springfield. We'll now move to the fire component, and the Commissioner of the Springfield Fire Department, Bernard B.J. Calvi.
Good morning, Mayor. Thank you. Over the weekend, as Commissioner Claproot stated, was extremely busy with 911 calls. On the 3rd of July, we had about 300 complaints for fireworks. On the 4th of July, we had almost 500. This caused the 911 system to be almost overwhelmed. Calls were being kicked to Northampton. They were being transferred back to Springfield to 130 Pearl Street. Then they were bouncing to the auxiliary answering point at Roosevelt Avenue. This, despite being busy, was able to be handled by the dispatchers at the Emergency Communications Center. Kudos to them. It was a very stressful time for them trying to answer all these calls. Over the weekend, we did not have any significant fires. We did have a couple of accidents. I believe 1 required extrication. All in all, it was a good weekend for the Springfield Fire Department. We currently have no one out with COVID-related illness, so that's all I have to report today. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Calvi. Thank you, Commissioner Calvi. We will now move to the DPW. Director Chris Signoli is here, and we appreciate what his rank and file is doing day in and day out with our pickup of our trash and recycling, yard waste, and the street work that continues to go on. The Director of the Springfield Department of Public Works, Chris Signoli.
Good morning, Mayor. Thank you. The DPW is at full strength with regard to employees and COVID. As we move into the summer months, we will be moving into vacation season with a lot of our employees. We don't let them take vacation during the winter in a lot of cases. Trash, recycling, and yard waste is continued to be picked up. Again, we've had some delays on that on certain days, so it will be picked up on your day. If we are moving to another day, we will let you know on that. Construction is moving forward in the city. Central Street project will be starting in the next week or 2 with utility work, as well as Bay and Berkshire and 6 Corners. And that's basically the report from DPW right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Signoli. Thanks, Director Signoli. Now on an update on facilities and parks is the Director Patrick Sullivan.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everyone. As the Mayor indicated and Helen indicated, we were disappointed not to be able to move forward with the movies and the park program. but when you look at the top map and the governor's guidance, we had to put a hold on that at this time. The splash pads are going well, and we can gauge that by the amount of hand sanitizer being used, so we appreciate everyone following the rules and regulations. Parks went well over the weekend, and we were, I was very happy to see the news stories on both 22 and 40 and everyone using the parks and safe social distance. Finally, with the governor's guidance, the Barney Carriage House can reopen at 65 guests, King Philip Stockade at 65 guests, and Emma's Place on Parker Street for 45 guests. And if anyone is looking to do an event, and we would love to help, you start being able to either celebrate a small family gathering or a wedding. That number is 787-7733. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sullivan. Chief Development Officer Tim Sheen is here, and again, proud of he and his unit. We've put out well over $1.5 million now from the city in grants to our businesses, 3 prime the pump rounds, and now our nonprofit round. So we appreciate that. And without further ado, the Chief Development Officer of the City of Springfield, Tim Sheehan.
Thank you, Mayor. We're very happy to be on the first day of Phase 3 with more businesses opening. As the Mayor indicated, last week we announced a nonprofit round of grants totaling $250,000 for up to $25,000 per nonprofit. Those applications are due the 17th of July at 3 p.m. We have completed the round, the last small business round. We had well over 130 applications totaling $1.7 million worth of requests. We'll be scoring those applications. My team is getting pretty proficient at moving those through pretty quickly. We're hopeful to have them completed either the end of this week or early next week. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Sheehan. Solicitor Ed Pakula is here. In our update, we were all set on that. So at this time, if there are any questions, my cabinet heads and myself will take any questions you might have. If not, thank you. Yes, Matt?
The question is to go to Helen as well, but with the opening of MGM now imminent, that doesn't have any
Yes.
this month. It's going to be one of the largest venues in the city that's going to have a substantial number of people, but also in comparison to, I'd say, anecdotally good mask compliance that we have here in the city, we're drawing people in. So I'm curious if the city or the health department has any plans to ensure that MGM is enforcing a mask requirement on guests that are coming in, because otherwise, they could potentially be an issue for them.
Yes, and they are too. Matter of fact, Commissioner Helen Carlton-Harris and some of my other key individuals will be touring it before they open up to make sure that all the proper procedures are being followed. An epidemiologist, I believe, that they have also, but yes, they're going to do it, and we are also going to require them to do it as they start their rephasing of opening up.
So the casino will be responsible for ensuring all guests are masked up. So to be honest, I have to even be practical with the city business. That is the plan, to make sure they're doing it, and then they'll be held responsible if guests are not complying.
They are, and again, they've done their due diligence, and again, Commissioner Carlton-Harris and other key members of my cabinet will be on there very shortly to tour all the COVID-related 19, not only the restrictions, but the revamping temporarily of the area. So yes, that has been put across to us. Okay. Thank you to the media, TV media, to the radio media, to the print media. Thank you for getting out this important information weekly and sometimes daily when we have updates. I want to thank the residents and the business community of the city of Springfield. It's because of your efforts in working with us, cooperating and collaborating together that we have continuously being able to knock these numbers down as we move forward to conquer and defeat this COVID-19 coronavirus. I also want to thank each and every one of my cabinet heads and rank and file, tested and true, who day in and day out continue to provide services to the residents and the business community here of the city of Springfield. I will once again ask you to please not be complacent. You see what is going on across the country in many states where their numbers have spiked. We have to stay ever vigilant. Wear those masks, please. Wash your hands. Social distancing is important. If you don't feel well, stay home. You've pretty much been able to stay with individuals that you've been with throughout this whole thing. So if you're going to start venturing out, follow these tested and true public health, science, and medical strong recommendations. Massachusetts is doing it right under Governor Baker, Lieutenant Governor Polito, and we're doing it right here in the city of Springfield with all the cabinet heads and rank and file. So, and working with Bay State Medical Center and working with Mercy, Trinity, if and when, knock on wood, if and when a spike occurs, we'll be able to handle it. We don't want to get to that point, and we will continue to move forward. So I wish each and every one of you good health, and God bless you, God bless your families, and God bless our city of Springfield. Thank you very much.